Hi everyone, so this is a follow-up video to my last video. So if you didn't see the first video on the pattern stamp tool, head over to the first video. I'll put the link up right here. Okay, so this is a follow-up, and what I've done is a couple of things. So I have created a set of textures that you can use to paint onto your images or to use for backdrops. Now, a lot of people maybe don't have the time, or even maybe they don't even know where to start when it comes to making their own background textures. Okay, so I've made a pattern set, and you can purchase this along with these brushes that I'm using. But what I'm going to do today is teach you how to make your own pattern set, and also how to make your own brushes that you can use with the pattern stamp tool. Now, I have had a couple of people reach out to me and say that they tried to download Kyle brushes and that all of them had a tool assigned to them, either mixer brush or an actual paintbrush, what have you. So what I'll do is I will show you how to take any of those brushes that you would want to use with the pattern stamp tool and save them as a untooled brush so that you can use them for these techniques. Okay, first what we're going to do though is we're going to go through the pattern set that I made that you can actually purchase and use yourself. And I've tried to create a range of different colors and types so that you have a little bit of everything. This, I would say, is a more of a spring summer kind of set. There are a couple of darker, more patterns here that you can use for darker in studio shots as well. All right, so the first thing that I'm going to do is grab my pattern stamp tool. And for this one, I have this set that I've created for you guys. If you're interested in purchasing them, the patterns are included with the set. So let's just start with, I like to use either pattern 5 or 2 for this. And then what I'm going to do is head over to my pattern palette here. And you can see that here, I think there's 20 or 21 patterns in the set. I'm just going to go through each one, and I'm just going to show you what they look like using the pattern stamp tool. So as you can see, very painterly, very pretty. And what I like to do with these, in addition to creating backgrounds, is to use different patterns within an image for painting it and getting all kinds of different looks. So I'm just going to quickly go through this so that you can see what they all look like. Some of them are very floral-esque. So like, for instance, these two that I just did would look fabulous if you used a foliage or a leaf or some kind of brush that's found in nature. So the next thing that I want to show you is how to create your own texture palette, okay? And the easiest way that I find to do this is just to use any existing images that you have. Now, those can be outside shots, fabric shots, texture shots, any kind of shots that you have that have a beautiful array of colors, and I highly recommend a higher contrast looking image. So let's just take a look. Okay, so I chose this one. This is nice and high contrast, and it's got some really pretty colors in it. And all you want to do is grab your rectangular marquee tool, and you just want to sample a square of pixels. And I usually will choose something. Now this line of arm here, the color is a bit too much. You can include a little bit of it, but I tend to look for a little bit of everything, so it would be something like that. And all you do is hit Command J and make sure that you go over to your untitled new canvas, and this is simply 250 pixels by 250 pixels. That's it. It does not need to be large at all, and all you're going to do is grab that square and pull it onto your base layer, your 250 by 250 pixels. And we're just going to transform it and pull it over the entire canvas like this, okay? And then all you have to do is go to your menu and choose define brush pattern. Because we're not saving this one, we're just gonna leave the name as is. And now what you do is you click on your pattern stamp tool, make sure you go in here and you find the one that you want to work with. And as far as brushes are concerned, we're gonna do that next. But for this one, I'm just gonna use the same one that I used to show you the entire palette. And all you have to do is come in, and you can see it's got a lovely texture applied to it. You can make your brush smaller and the texture will get smaller, but this is essentially how I make all of these very simple pattern textures. You can even come in and perhaps grab a different brush if you want it to look a little bit more like actual paint strokes. In this set that I've made, there are several brushes, some with strokes, some without strokes, some more impressionist, some more impasto. So it just depends on what you're looking for, but that's all you do to make it. And then what you do is you simply go edit and define pattern. So once your pattern is defined here, I just name these. And then you come back up, you're going to see it right here, and you can drag it into a folder that you have made. And then you can come here and you can just delete that pattern, go OK. And now you have that pattern added to whatever set that you're working on. I typically like to just sort them by color and type so that they're all consistent as far as the type that I'm looking for. And so that's it, guys. That's how you do it. And then if you come back here, let's say we'll just add a new layer and we'll hide this one. So if you come in here and we've chosen that one, now you can come in and you can make your entire canvas with this particular texture if you want. What I recommend, and this is a great way to make your textured backgrounds as well, is I just fill the underlying layer with black, and that way I can really see what I'm doing as far as making my texture. So if you're looking at a quick and easy way to make your own backgrounds, these little patterns can really help you do that. And what I like to do is start grabbing different types of patterns and merging them together, perhaps with a different brush. And this is my brush 2 in the set. And then when you come in and you start adding in other patterns from the set, now you've got full control over exactly what you want your self-made digital backgrounds to look like. And I like to combine various patterns with these because I feel like it just really helps with the overall look of making your own backdrops. And for this one, obviously I'm going with more of a nature versus typical background for classic studio work. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to switch to another brush. Let's go to 7, and I'm going to change this as well. You can even really combine various colors and stuff like that. So you can see that brush is pretty opaque, so you might want to reduce your opacity down so that it's a little less opaque. And you can see that just simply by adding in a little bit of warmth to this, we start getting a really pretty look to it. This one is more of a watercolor brush, so you can see it really spreading nicely like that. I do suggest using different layers, unlike what I just did, so that if you want to adjust the opacity, you have more control, right? It's all about control. And now we're going to go back to our initial one that we made this with and go back to number 2, and you can see we're still on opacity 29, and now we can start just kind of blending everything together without doing it at 100%, because this is going to soften everything and help everything really blend in better together. So don't be afraid to mix and match all of these different patterns, because you can get some beautiful results. Let's actually try this one. We're just going to add in a little bit more lightness. And you can see that brush number 2 is very flowy. It doesn't have a ton of texture, so it's really good for blending, I find. And it's not quite as heavy-handed at 29% opacity and 39% flow. So once you're happy with your background, then what I suggest doing is coming in and just doing a simple curves adjustment to give it a little bit more drama. So a simple S curve will do. You can come in like this, and then what you can do is just grab a basic brush, preferably just a soft one, and just paint that off. And what I like to do a lot of times is I'll just tap and just bring the middle portion back a little bit so that it looks like you have more of a vignette. Okay, so this set should really help you create your own from scratch, from start to finish, if that's something that you want to do. And the brushes now. Okay, let's get into the brushes. So I have made all of these brushes specifically because I know that people were struggling with finding non-tool brushes. But I will show you how to make your own non-tool brushes. I'll just really quickly demonstrate this set so that you can see what it is that you have. So this is number 1, and the second one is the one that we've already been showing you, but this one, as you can see, is much more impressionist, I would say, but I love it. So we're just going to slowly go through all of these so you can see what each of these does. But definitely you want painterly type brushes. You don't really want to work with just basic brushes for this style, because you're not going to get the best of what can happen using this impressionist style. So again, textures, lots of spray, lots of unique different feels to these brushes. So this gives you a really good idea of what each brush does. It helps when you are looking at figuring out what type of brush you want to paint with. I try to include a lot of interesting, unique, different textures, different types, so that you would have something that you could work with and enjoy working with. This one's really good for more impasto. This one's definitely great for texture, for adding those dirty, rough edges. Here's another highly textured one. And this one's fantastic as well for more impasto. And another highly texturized one. Okay, so that's the brush set. So we're going to come back to this. We're just going to delete our pattern texture layer. And essentially you're going to want to start with, you can use this as well. This is still 250 by 250 pixels. It doesn't need to be huge, I find. But let's just go ahead and fill this box with white. And we're going to grab a brush and we're going to change our foreground color to black. Now, the key to this is if you downloaded Kyle's brushes and they're all a brush and you're like, I can't use it, then this is how you do it. So let's scroll down and find some of Kyle's brushes that have a tool assigned to them. Now, the only thing I can think is why some people have not been able to find brushes without a tool applied is that I know they rotate out the available sets for seasons and years and things like that. So this one that I have must be a much older one when there were no tools assigned. But let's find some brushes that have tools. Okay, so let's go into this. These are not Kyle's brushes. This is a different set that I purchased. But let's just say you can see that this Sargent brush here has a, make sure that you are working on a transparent layer above your fill layer, and make sure that you're using a pure black brush. And then when you come in and you just kind of tap around with that brush like so, you can decide, okay, I like that. You can create your entire own brush out of this particular look here. Let's say something like that. Okay, that's fine. So here's your, turn your background layer off, and now you can see what your brush tip will look like. And the key here is to go Edit. You're going to go Define Brush Preset. Now normally it'll say apply a tool to it or something like that, but for this one we're not going to, and we'll see what happens. We're just going to call it Test, and now we have Test. So let's go back to our palette. Let's turn that off and put a new one above. And now we're going to come down here to Test. Okay, so this is our test brush. I just want to make sure that this test brush does not have any tool applied to it. So you can see it's absolutely open to use with any tool, right? But now what you need to do is you need to come into your brush settings and you need to adjust it so that it actually does something as opposed to just being a blob, right? So the first thing is your brush tip shape. And what we're going to do is we're going to apply approximately 30% spacing to it, all right? Next one is Shape Dynamics, and Shape Dynamics, we do want size jitter. I usually put this up somewhere around 80%, like so. My control is going to be pen pressure. Now, hopefully if you're into art, this type of digital art, creating these things, you do use a pen tablet or, like me, a pen display. So I'm using the Zense Labs pen display. Hugely wonderful to work on and far less expensive and less glitchy than Wacom. Highly recommend. All right, so we've got our size jitter at 80. We're going to flip X and we're going to flip Y jitter because we want random, right? My next thing that I'm going to do is we're going to adjust the angle jitter a little bit, and then we're going to go to scattering, and we're going to scatter it just a bit. We don't want too much scattering, and control on that is fine. The next thing is texture. This is where you decide, do you want to apply a texture to this particular brush or do you want no texture? It just depends on the look you're going for. For this one, in my texture thing here, I've got some textures that I've personally uploaded. They can just be generic textures, paper textures. It's really whatever you want, and you can invert it or not. It's entirely up to you, but I like to keep my scale relatively down. Texture each tip depends if you want that. So if you start looking, that's texture each tip. Turn that off and it doesn't look much different, but if we change this to subtract, you're going to see it looking entirely different now, right? And you can also see that this pattern is not seamless, so it keeps redoing itself over and over again. Let's see if we increase our scale. If we increase the scale, now you can see that that pattern is less repeatable. It's not going to repeat so much and look apparently like a repeating pattern. You're going to get larger, more interesting texture to it. So it just depends. If you invert it, it's going to be a little bit different even still. But that is a great way to create a texture brush. If you don't want texture, simply turn that sucker off. Now, as far as transfer is concerned, your opacity jitter is going to make it look more like a painting. Do you see this? So I tend to really like to use, so yeah, make your brush larger. You can come in and now you can see that you've really affected that exact brush, and now it's more painterly, it's more what you're into. All of these other things here, you can choose to use them or not. Smoothing can be good. Okay, so that's how you can make your own brush just by manipulating different settings within the brush settings. Now, what happens if you find a brush that you absolutely love and it's got a brush tool assigned to it? Easy. So all you have to do, let's say we're going to come down, let's see what we got here. So these are watercolor brushes and they've all got a brush applied to them. Let's say we want Coral Kiss. Well, let's just do a new blank layer. I apologize for the quail. In June we have a million quail families and they're all making babies, and those are always the men calling their girls. So this is a pretty cool one. I would say that that would be great to use with the pattern stamp tool. So all you have to do if you want to save it without a tool assigned is go into your brush settings again, and down here you're going to see a little plus sign like this, and you're also going to see here the capture brush size and include tool settings. So make sure you don't check those, and now this is a brush that you can use. I like to rename it to, you know, test 2, something like that. And remember what you name it, because if you're like me and you've got hundreds of brushes, sometimes it's hard to find them once you save it. So now we're going to go over to our brush menu, and you can see that it's saved in that same group, and basically all you have to do is grab that brush, hang it all the way up to the top like so. See how many brushes I have? And then you can like add it to whatever group you want to put it in. I would recommend creating a folder called Pattern Stamp Tool, and then just putting all the brushes that you create for use with the Pattern Stamp Tool in there. But that's a great brush too. Like, it's gonna really be fun to work with. All right, okay, so let's see this in real life, shall we? So what I've done here, I've got, where is it? I must have closed her. No, here we go. Okay, so I had this boudoir shot that I was working on. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to create a background that would kind of blend in with the headpiece. So what I did here, I just took a little box of her headpiece right there. And essentially what you do is you have your little 250 by 250 square. And what I've done here is I've just plunked it in there. And then if you look here, I just used that same technique and I created this texture out of it. And now what I can do is click on my pattern stamp tool, and we're going to look over here and we're going to see, and what we're going to do is the same thing as before. So we're going to go show all items and define pattern, and we're going to call this whatever you like. And then you're going to come over to your set. So this is the one I just made, and then we're going to drag it into this one. And now we have it. It's also selected. And so what we can do is go back over to our portrait, and you can see that I've already created a new layer and I've removed the background so that I can manipulate this one here easily using the pattern stamp tool with this. Now you can see that I've got my opacity still at 29, my flow at 39. So if you feel like you want it to be a little stronger, then of course you can come in and you can adjust those. But now we have this really pretty texture that we made from her actual headpiece that she's wearing. And it's pretty simple to just come in and create our own background with it. More of a painting look. So we're going to come back to our new one that we just made, and we're going to see what that will do. And a lot of times I'll just gently tap it to get different looks, because every time you put your brush down for this, you're going to get a different result. So if I do use a heavy texture like this, because this one has a pretty heavy texture, I do tend to come back in and grab one of my softer ones, like the number 2, and then I'll just kind of soften and blend those in a little bit more. Okay, and you can reduce the opacity on a little bit if you want, but I personally don't want that window showing up there, so I wouldn't. And then what you can do is put a new layer above it, and we're going to pull up our opacity to about 40, and you can start looking at using other types of images in your pattern group. So let's say we wanted to use this one. Then when we come in, we can really start affecting the overall look. You can go over top of portions of your subject just for a different, unique look. And I'll just show you this one over here. This one was exactly the same. So this was shot with window light, and the background, I did not like it. As a matter of fact, I really didn't edit many from this session ever because I really hated the styling in this image. But I completely revamped it by using the pattern stamp tool and making it truly look like it was painted. And you can see in the set here that I used this one here as well as portions of that one. So it's really fun. Have a blast. Make your own. Buy mine. Whatever works for you. But I hope this solves the issue of the brushes, as well as just having a folder full of different types of patterns so that you don't have to use only the existing elements within your photograph at that time.